If all the panelists would like to turn their videos back on, we'll go to them one by one. We have slightly overrun the initial hour and a half, but given we've got over 120 people still online, and we've had a number of questions, we'll plough on, and hopefully everybody will bear with us and stay to hear some of the questions. If I start off on the individual questions for the various presenters from the portfolio companies, we have, to a man and woman, had thanks for all the presentations. They were excellent. But starting first with you, Alistair, because you were the first to present. Obviously, there are a huge amount of opportunities for Wild, and people are focused on particularly the things that have been in turn announced. I don't know if you can give us a little bit more flavour on the satellite opportunity. Obviously, there's a huge market opportunity there, but where does your uniqueness lie, and where are you going to be actually focused on initially in generating revenue to that market?
It's a good question. It's a relatively simple answer. So, what's unique about what we've done is basically creating, I'll go through again, it's creating affordable connectivity. So we have taken out of the end-to-end solution, satellite IoT end-to-end solution, we've taken out licensed spectrum. That's billions of dollars of cost that in effect the end user pays for. So we've taken that cost out, and we've managed to take that cost out by utilising our expertise in LoRaWAN to use that as a connectivity technology to actually connect devices directly to satellites, which is pretty difficult because if you think about it, these satellites are 700 kilometres up in the sky and they're travelling pretty rapid, by the way. And we've got to solve the problem, multiple problems. One of them is, how do we mitigate interference? Because this is unlicensed spectrum, although it's regulated. So we've written a whole lot of algorithms about how to mitigate any interference. We've looked at the fact that our device needs to be connected to a sensor stuck in a field or at a glacier or somewhere where there's no power. So our device has to stay in the ground for 10 years on battery power. So we've had to look at how we reduce the amount of battery consumption. There's no electricity out there. And that's one of the key technologies and key capabilities that we've brought to the party. So it's all about understanding when to switch the sensor on, when to start to collect data, knowing when that satellite is actually available to collect data, and it's about a 14-minute window when you've got to wake everything up, collect the data, know the satellite's there, get the data to that satellite. So this is really unique, and this is the fundamental unique capability that Wild is delivering from a technology perspective. Then from a market perspective, where are we going out? So we're focusing on the agricultural market, the environment market, oil and gas, and maritime. Maritime is really important. There's container ships all over the place carrying perishable goods. 25% of all perishable goods are chucked in a bin by the time that container gets to the port it wants to get to. So that's a huge waste. So all of these guys, Maersk, all the big shipping guys, they're all putting sensors, humidity sensors, temperature sensors into all these containers. We're taking all that data and making sure that perishable goods actually arrive at their destination and in a fit state for consumption. So agriculture, really important. 30% of the world's wastage in water comes from agriculture. It's a problem that needs to be resolved. The population's growing from 7 billion to 9 billion in the next 30 years. We can't even feed the 7 billion we've got at the moment. Soil erosion, forest erosion, everything needs, technology is needed to come in the agricultural sector to ensure that we can feed ourselves, to ensure we can protect the environment. And there's a huge amount of money being pumped into technology in agriculture and as much as is in the environment. So to try and give you a geographical view of where we are, we're looking in agriculture. It's Brazil, I would say the whole of Latin America, the whole of Southeast Asia, Russia, Eastern Europe, and the US, which is another massive producer of agricultural products. So to quantify, I'd just say globally is the market we're going after. Our uniqueness I've just explained. And I think the third part that I wanted to bring out again is that we've got some seriously big partners that we've signed up. As I said, they have a significant chunk of revenue, so we're going to be leveraging some big partners to get us to market. I hope that helped.
Very much so, thank you. Just a final question before I move on to the others. Moving a bit closer to home with mesh networks. Obviously, there's been some coverage of the care home work that's been done in Scotland. Many people are keen to hear how that's progressing and whether it's a solution that might have wider uses, particularly in a post-COVID environment where there'll still be a need to monitor people, particularly in situations like care homes or hospitals or elsewhere where you need to know where people are at a particular time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the care home project was about using our location capability that we were using in stadiums, in retail, etc. So it was using that location capability to create these 2-meter bubbles. These were social distancing bubbles. So we just used the same technology. We pivoted during the pandemic, which made a lot of sense, considering stadiums and retail were basically in lockdown. But the underlying technology is the same. So the care home business is going really well. We've signed up Ascom, that's they're a global healthcare reseller for a while, that is, and so they're taking our solution to market. We firmly believe that the solution that we've developed is not just solely about social distancing. We've built into this product the capability to sit at home on your app and book a slot to go and visit the care home or visit the doctor. So there's all that capability built into this app. We've also built in, an equivalent of WhatsApp into our application so that staff can communicate with each other, staff can communicate with visitors. Visitors can sit at home and get a lot of information about how their parents or the residents are within the care facility. But we're also now learning an awful lot more about requirements in care facilities. And we're seeing this move from a pilot into more of a solution that we believe will become part of a healthcare toolkit, not just in care homes, but also within the hospital environments, where we're now looking at how we connect ventilators. We talked about the enterprise mesh. Is how do we also now connect ventilators, oxygen canisters, beds, a whole lot of assets actually into the mesh network, and be able to track where they are. So it's not just looking at residents, patients and staff, but also all of the asset that's within that environment and bringing it into one single network. And the last bit that part of your question was, do we see this moving into other sectors? Well, yes, we do. We're using our solution and its location capabilities for slightly different applications, but it's everything from delivering location-aware content to managing assets to figuring out where stuff actually is and communicating with staff, visitors and residents within healthcare facilities, and also within stadiums. That's obviously not with residents, but in football stadiums, in retail and businesses in general.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Alistair. We'd like to talk about that all night, but must move on. Peter, couple of questions for you. One was just a small clarification from a shareholder. It says that NVMA appears to have a sister company, Control Solutions Limited, with similar directors. Could you just clarify what the relationship is between those two organisations, please?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. So, In Control is basically an industrial controls company. It was founded by Pat Nash and Jan Himper many years ago, and NVMA was spun out of In Control. Pat Nash continues. He focuses 100% of his time on NVMA and is focused on the growth of NVMA, and is director on the NVMA side. In Control continues its business. It's complementary to NVMA. We're focused on industrial automation. In Control is focused on industrial controls. So as you can imagine, there is some introductions of customers that In Control makes to us. And there's some opportunities that we have in NVMA that we send to In Control. But that's about the base element of the relationship between the two companies is, passing on different customer opportunities. And then there's common shareholders in the two founders of Pat Nash and Jan Hemper.
Thanks, Peter. That's clear, and I can see the different focus there. Moving on more to look at the business. Obviously, from your presentation, asset mining looks fantastic. The return on investment, if I'm running a factory, is huge. There's a great global market opportunity. You've been focused mostly on the UK to date, a bit of expansion in Northern Europe. Could you give a little bit more on routes to market and how you're looking to expand further? We've had a couple of questions. Is the focus going to be sort of gradually moving out across Europe and then elsewhere, or are there other geographies or sectors that you will focus on, and how will you do it vis-a-vis partnerships?
Yep. So you asked, I guess, about geographies and then channels.
Basically, yes.
Yes, and so we're spending a lot of time on channel. In 2019 and 2020, we had, really one key channel partner. And that's been on a great partnership with a company that's basically a service maintenance organization. And they have introduced a lot of companies to AssetMinder, and that's been a great partner for us. And so companies that are sending, a man or a woman in a van up and down the M1 or the M4 out to service machines can really be a lot more efficient by going ahead and hooking up those machines to AssetMinder. So companies that are providing maintenance or providing services to industrial equipment, or in critical infrastructure, whether that be railroad infrastructure, transportation networks, port authorities, all of those companies that are out kind of servicing those type of critical infrastructure can take advantage of AssetMinder. And so we are partnering with a lot of those organizations who are then deploying AssetMinder to their end customers. We also are working with, frankly, a lot of hardware companies. If you have a factory or someone who's operating a lot of different smart meters and smart products, the first company that they typically go and talk to is frankly a hardware company. And then that hardware company says, we can sell you some sensors, but you need to hook them up to a platform. And so some of our biggest customer opportunities have come through those type of dialogues where a company has bought some sensors or interested in sensors and doesn't know what to do behind the sensor. And so those hardware companies know about NVMA and AssetMinder, and they've been a great opportunity for us and have given us a lot of really great potential, great new customers for us. And so that's just accelerating over the past months to new opportunities, frankly, we didn't dream about even in October or November last year. With respect to geographic focus, we really, when I came in the business, we were very much focused on the UK and expanding into the Benelux and French region. Surprisingly, through reverse inquiry, even through our website and digital communications, we've gotten some larger industrial players that have come in, and through reverse inquiry and through some of these hardware companies, have already started to expand our market of operations into Germany and even across to the United States. And so what we're doing is we're expanding our web capabilities, our digital capabilities, our social media content publishing into those markets, and hiring individuals, and about to make our our first permanent hire in the United States. We already have a couple of part-time hires in the U.S. And then hooking up with key industrial players that are some of the top global companies that are going to be selling Asset Minder to their customers. So it's I think for us it's more about trying to focus on which channels to go with and trying to limit those channels, because today we're still a small team, but we're going to be expanding those employees during the year.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that, Peter. Joe, moving on to you. Had a number of questions. The first one was with an attendee this evening who was concerned about his privacy and how you actually collect data and what the protections are. And we all know that there is more and more focus on protecting people's personal data and how that might impact what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really, really important point, which is central to all that we're doing. So we completely respect people's privacy. The data that we collect is anonymised immediately, so we never collect data about Mrs. Smith who lives in a location. So there is no identifiable personal data. The data that we collect in an unstructured form, we want to collect data like gender, but we don't want to know who it is. So we don't in any way go near health records. We don't in any way take in data that makes it identifiable to an individual name. If for any reason we did get data, we've got a filtering right at the beginning to anonymise it. So we have no interest. We don't point our machines to personalise, and the output that pharma get in no way can be identified. So that's one part of the answer. The other, I mentioned a patient charter, and the reason we've been working on that is, to be fair, patients have to benefit. They benefit through better patient outcomes, but that's quite a long way along the journey. So how can we, one of our values is transparency, how can we be transparent at all points? So one of the ways is to bring patients into the equation, so bringing patients onto our advisory board and having a way to be transparent. So, for example, working with patient groups, for them to be able to access aspects of our data for good, to be able to share. And, for us, we know that patient groups, for example, really struggle with diversity and gender. So for us to be able to hone in our data to help them access more on gender and diversity will give back. So it's a really important part of our equation. And the most important part is it isn't personal data. It is aggregated, and it is always collected legally and ethically from people who want to share aggregated data.
Okay, certainly, thank you. That certainly answers that. The majority of the rest of the questions, and I'm conscious we've got limited time, have really been on what's happened since the launch of patient metrics in February.
Yep.
We announced this morning that you've secured the first customer, but can you give us a little bit more flavour about how the take-up's been, the interest you're seeing, and really how you see it going in the future?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we very much took the investment with Tern and worked with Tern on the milestones of accelerating our R&D and bringing it to a conclusion. And the conclusion is the launch of patient metrics. So we're delighted that, during March, we've been able to go out and talk to customers. We have worked with customers throughout our development process because we want to put the customer at the centre. So we have a number of clients who we are working with because they've been part of our development. So we haven't kind of locked ourselves away and then come out. So we're working with a number of partners, and yes, we have a signed contract because we are basically working on how to take that within pharma. So being able to take it into multiple subscriptions and create our patient confidence score as a real metric, a real way that pharma can work with it. So we believe that we've had a really good reception. We believe that now is the time, and the big pharma companies are certainly receptive to what we're offering. So we believe that commercial rollout is on target.
Excellent. Well, that's very good to hear. We'll try and finish up in the next few minutes, and probably time to ask a few general questions and turn for Al and Sarah. But before I do, one comment that I get on a very regular basis, and I've had a few this evening from shareholders, is why Tern can't announce more specific information on the portfolio companies, revenue performance, number of products sold, whatever it might be. And I don't know if any of the portfolio CEOs would like to comment on the importance of the commercial confidentiality in driving shareholder value. I think being close to the company, I understand what can and can't be said, and absolutely, as Gareth said in his presentation, why there are things that we would love to say but we can't. But I don't know, it might be nice for some of the attendees to hear first-hand experience of the sort of confidentiality restrictions you're under with your clients. I don't know, Alistair, Peter, Joe, one of you who more would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly comment on Big Pharma. You know, we are absolutely under confidentiality clauses in terms of what we can and what we can't say, in that it's reciprocal. We will try to build into those agreements wherever we can case studies, testimonials, because they actually help the industry. The industry does actually work together, so it's in our interest and actually in the industry's interest to be able to publish those. But it is very difficult and it's very sensitive as we onboard customers. And, you know, we would lose a customer if we basically released too early or without approval. And, you know, some of those companies can be quite slow to approve, but we have to respect, you know, both sides of the equation.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Alistair, I don't know if you've got any comments to make.
Yeah, sure. I think what we remember is that we all sign up to confidentiality clauses in all these contracts. I think what we've got to remember is that, you know, we're getting business because we're delivering something that's pretty out there, pretty unique, and delivers significant value to our customers. And they want to retain that value. They want to retain that value for as long as possible. So there is that aspect of what the customer's views on maintaining his value, maintaining his competitiveness, and actually but demanding that we don't actually put out a lot of information that could potentially compromise their way forward. So we always have to really look at that side of it as well.
Yeah. No, thank you, and that's very helpful. And finally, Peter, I don't know if you've got anything to say on that.
Yeah, I would just add that I think, you know, all of us in the portfolio companies want to communicate more out there, and I think that, you know, as Joe mentioned as well, we're all going to be coming out with, you know, where we can announce things. I know that we're working on some press releases right now that we're looking forward to making, and we're going to put that on social media. And I know we as a company at NBMA will be getting a lot more active, and we hope that investors will follow us, and I think you'll learn a lot more over the next 12 months from us. So stay tuned.
Well, thank you, Peter. I think you make a very valid point there that I would reiterate to everybody here. You know, there are restrictions on what we can say as Tern, the number of announcements we can put out, but there are things happening every day with the portfolio companies. They're doing their own PR, so I would encourage you to follow them on social media, follow the press releases. You know, we try and publicise as much as we can, but there is a lot of great stuff out there that you'll be able to see. Well, finally, to wrap up, and Al and Sarah, you know, we mentioned in the AGM